Good morning. My passage today comes from John, the 6th chapter, verse 35, the King James Version. And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth in me shall never thirst. When we take of Jesus, we take of the bread of life. John, the 6th chapter, verse 51 says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. When Jesus was on the earth back in the time of Moses, he taught about the bread from heaven, which was called manna. Manna is the bread God sent to feed the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. They said, our fathers ate manna in the desert, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus said, my Father gives to you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who came down from heaven and gives his life unto the world. The bread that gives us life. This bread did not just feed the Israelites' stomachs with food. They partook or ate of this bread, and they had life. This is much like the Samaritan woman when Jesus told her that he could give her water that would be so satisfying that she would never thirst again. Beginning on the physical plane, then he moves immediately to the spiritual plane, from physical bread to spiritual bread. When Brother T gave me the scripture, he suggested that I read and study to prepare my message. I began to pray for God to lead my words. It was much after prayer and study that my message began to evolve. In the 34th chapter of Psalms, it reads, taste and see the Lord is good. This doesn't mean you actually bite into the flesh of Jesus. It means we should take Jesus into our hearts, eat of his goodness, taste of his love for us. I'd like to share a story of how my life was blessed once I began to taste the bread of life. When I first began my career in teaching, I had a love for the kids and for teaching and was good at it. I was commended on several occasions on my supreme work ethics, as well as my ability to engage children in learning. I'll never forget my professor, Dr. Hammond, at my graduation telling my parents, Jana was born to teach. But something happened during my second year here in Bibb County. I felt that I should be doing something so much more. I was no longer content, if you will. After months of contemplating on how to change my career, I finally took the plunge. I did not renew my teaching contract because I had a vision. Note here that I say I had a vision. I actually quit my job to pursue what I felt at the time was my vision. I thought I had it all planned. I thought it would be very easy to change my path. Yes, I thought. Well, after months and months of applying for the job of my dreams with no success, I began to apply for all jobs, any job that I thought would hire me, any job except teaching. I became nervous and quite unsure of myself for the first time. I was basically living off of my savings account. I was praying and my family was praying, but it just didn't seem like I would find a job. I really didn't want to give up my dream and go back to teaching, but after 8 months had passed and still had no job, I really didn't have a choice. We were approaching the holiday season, so I was able to find a part-time retail position at the mall, but this was not the job I left my career for. What do you know what was wrong with this picture? I was praying and asking God to help me, but I was not partaking of the bread. But with my part-time job, I had plenty of time on my hands, so I decided to come out for a part in the drama and arts production, The Lion King of Kings. But what I was actually really doing was partaking in God's bread. Because when the drama and arts department, they put on these plays, and of course it's entertaining to us as the audience, but did you know the message behind the costumes and the makeup is feeding us? It's like God's bread, from physical bread to spiritual bread. I remember coming out and practicing and having a really good time until they tried to teach me to dance. But we always ended in prayer, and it felt good. We could share any woes or worries that we had been experiencing. And I remember one night I decided to share that I would like to be prayed for about my jobless situation. and Brother Ronnie prayed for me. And I remember telling my mom how touched I felt after he had finished. I think it was like a week later, and I got a call from my cousin. She told me about a part-time early intervention program, or EIP position, opening at one of the elementary schools. I wouldn't be in the classroom per se, but I sure felt it would be retail. I thought my chances were slim to none, though, because EIP teachers, they're usually veteran teachers. I only had 2 years of teaching experience. So I was so nervous when I went in for the interview and saw that it was a 6-panel interview. And then I opened the door, and I immediately recognized a member of the panel, Brother T. I was still trying to figure out if that made me more comfortable or more nervous. I didn't know if I should acknowledge that I knew him or not, so I kind of just nodded and anyways, to make a long story short, I got the position. And at the end of the school year, was offered a full-time position to establish the school's first math lab, which is my current position. I'm sure each of you have an example of how God has touched your lives. But do you also have examples of how you took of his bread? I ask today, will you take the plunge, take of his bread and taste his goodness? It should be noted that there are thousands of people in the world today who have partaken of Jesus Christ, who will witness that he has so satisfied them that they are now content. Their search and quest for God is satisfied. How can you dispute their claims without trying for yourself? It always boils down to personal choice and personal action. How and when will you choose to partake in the bread of life?